Good morning and welcome to everyone to the Taming the CoronaCoaster webinar. It's no doubt you're all feeling it to varying degrees depending where you are around the country. We've got quite a few people joining us from Melbourne today, but also some from Sydney, Brisbane and a few other parts. And no doubt the CoronaCoaster is a little bit different in every part of the world, wherever you live. Today really is about how we can determine to get through what we're doing now, but also to live with it over time. Because I think it's going to be with us in varying degrees for some time, and we need to be able to work out how do we personally and as organisational leaders learn to tame the CoronaCoaster. So today's session will be in sort of two broad parts. The first will really about techniques and habits and things we can do as individuals to help ourselves tame the CoronaCoaster. And that comes from the conversations I've had with the organisations I work with, either some boards and some of my consulting clients, and in fact, a number of you on this session. And that component of the session was actually, I was motivated by my client Entity Solutions to put together for their team, who were starting to think about how do they tame their CoronaCoaster. The second part, just towards the end, I'll then sort of broaden the theme a little and talk about what are some of the leadership things that we've seen and what are some of the leadership things we can consider in helping our people tame the CoronaCoaster. Now, obviously, there's some overlap between the two, but I'm going to do it in two ways. It's going to be as interactive as we can make it. We'll hopefully be able to make sure everyone's screens and videos are working when's needed. We've obviously got a chat box, so please use that, and a question and answer box as well. And make sure you're sending it to everyone so everyone can see anything you're saying as we move through. The session will be recorded, and also you'll get a copy of the pack too. So I'd like to start by just acknowledging that we're all feeling to varying degrees a certain degree of strain around what we've gone through from March. And the question is, how are we actually feeling? How are we actually feeling? We have, no doubt, good days and bad days. And we have days when we're coping and days when we feel good and days when we don't feel so good. So I'm actually just put a poll together, which I'd like you to complete. I'll launch the poll now. And it's really, on a good day, I mostly feel, and pick up to 3. I don't have to pick all 3. And then the second question is, on a not so good day, I mostly feel. So hopefully the polls come up for you to see, and you can start to vote. So pick up to 3. On a good day, I mostly feel. On a not so good day, I don't feel so. I feel differently. So it'd be good to get to start to vote on that now. Great, the votes are coming in now. Thank you. I'll leave that open a little while so we can get everyone voting. So we've got over 30 people on the call. And of course, part of the issue is the balance between good and bad days. And what we hope today is to help you with some tips to tame the CoronaCoaster so there's more good than not so good days. A few more to go yet. Fantastic. I'll end it in a couple of secs if everyone can just keep entering what they think. It's anonymous, obviously. I'm not going to follow you up. Great. I'll just end the poll and then share the results. So on a good day, sort of the leading thing is positive and productive and a little focused, which is obviously what we want to be mostly. So positive, productive, but a mix. A few calm and few in control. On a not so good day, on a bad day, it can be quite unproductive, frustrated and anxious. And interestingly, I think in that top 4 there is tired, and I think that's right. And I think in particular those that are working from home and are working on screens, that tired piece is very much to the fore. Okay. Sorry, some people weren't able to submit. I don't know why that was, the challenges of technology. So the issue for us is how can we be more in control? Because it's okay to some days not feel so good, and actually to acknowledge that and to have someone to vent it with. But the question for us is, what can we control, and who's in control? And it feels, I don't know but to you, but at times for me, that there are other people in control. Clearly we've got prime ministers and premiers and health officers telling us what we can and can't do at the moment, very much around what we can't do rather than what we can do. So whilst there's other people on the nozzles of control of our life more than normal, the question is, what can we take back and be in control of? Because I think that is the starting place for us to think about taming the CoronaCoaster. And it comes back to a concept that I've worked with a number of you around over the years called the locus of control. And locus just means source. Where does our source of control from? Are we controlled by others, or are we controlled by how we react to others and to trigger situations? So you can have an external locus, an external source, an internal source. So an external source, you focus very much on the trigger or the stimuli, the thing that happens to you, to how you react. It's sort of helplessness, out of your hands, you might say. An internal control, locus of control, is really that it flips that and really thinks, no, well, yeah, that's happened, and I may or may not be able to impact that, but how I react, what opportunity I take out of that, is in my control, and that's really key. And if we think about some different examples over time, technology. I'm sorry for those a little bit frustrated then and not being able to submit. Quite often can be, something happens to you, your computer doesn't work, or the internet goes down, and you can throw up your hands and go, well, nothing I can do about it. That's technology. That's the internet. That's the NBN, my favourite whipping horse. Oh, and that's very much an external locus of control. An internal locus of control can say, well, actually, I'll go and do something else. Or maybe I need to learn the technology more, or I need to actually upgrade my NBN connection. So it's how you react to it, coming from whether it's external or internal. Then, customers. We all have customers, and they can create situations for us at different times. And a customer may ring us and be angry because someone did something in another department, something that we had no input in. And as external locus of control, we can go, oh, well, that's just how it is. I'll leave that to the other department to solve, or the other team member to look after. Internal locus of control is, what am I going to do about it? How can I make this situation better? Competitors, similarly, we can respond to competitive threats in the market. We can respond to market challenges by saying, well, I can't change how they price. I can't change how they target my customers. Or we can say, what can I do? What choices can I make? How can I repackage my products and services to meet what the market is requiring? And of course, the big one at the moment, where there are a lot of external stimuli, external triggers, so to speak, from COVID. And we can feel very much out of control at the moment. And the question is, how do we respond? What do we do about it? My aim in how I'm trying to respond, and it's challenging, is to be more of internal locus of control. We like the character on the left that sees a tangled mass of string, or the character on the right that looks for making that string into a nice ball of string. A problem versus solution, issue, challenge versus opportunity. So the question is for us all, what can we control, and what can we influence, and how do we do that over time? The challenge, though, I think for many of us is how to take back control when there are a lot of external triggers and there are things going on in our head that make it difficult to take back control. And the concept I want to share now is around self-talk. What is it we're saying to ourselves when these external triggers occur, and how are we trying to dig deep to have a more internal locus of control? And so self-talk sort of works like this, and this is from a model by Dr. Darrell Cross, a psychologist. And it really is around the trigger event. There are always trigger events in our life, and that trigger event occurs, a situation, which then creates, you start to think about it, and you have self-talk where you're trying to make meaning of that trigger, make meaning of what that action is. And you have self-talk, little conversation goes in your mind. And all of this can happen in a nanosecond, of course. That therefore results in feelings or emotions, and then determines how you respond and act. So the challenge, if I think about a different example, one that has happened to us all at various times, someone cuts us off in traffic. That's the trigger event that we have. We then immediately go, why did that happen? They're going to make me late. That was dangerous, which therefore flows to some feelings of anger and frustration and wanting revenge. And so therefore you may respond by speeding up and cutting them off, or overtaking them above the speed limit, or doing something else equally as dangerous, which may respond in road rage, which will have a whole other trigger event going on. Alternatively, you can determine, you think, oh, I wonder why they cut me off. Maybe they're in a hurry. Maybe there's an emergency. I'm not that much of a hurry anyway to act unsafely. So I'm going to feel calm. I'm going to feel in control. And that's how I'm going to respond. And I respond by pulling my foot off the pedal, by slowing down and letting the person go. So the challenge is, how do we talk to ourselves? And in particular, when we get so many trigger events at the moment that are uncertain, anxious, creating concerns, as we talked about when we did the poll earlier. And we can, at times, remove the trigger event. And for me, I've removed the trigger event of listening to the news and listening to any of the Premier's conferences in the middle of the day. I don't do that. Because I don't need to hear all that. And I'm attempting, not always successfully, to just listen to the news at the beginning and the end of the day. That creates very different self-talk to me, but it's removing the trigger event. That's not completely possible or realistic. So the question for us is to start to question our self-talk when it goes into external locus of control, when it goes into negative that can create the wrong sort of emotions. And it might be as simple as making the thought into a subject. Not that I'm feeling anxious, but actually I'm thinking that I'm feeling anxious, for instance, putting some distance between how we think and feel to be able to try and look at it as a separate subject. It might be around trying to actually slow down and think about it and not catastrophize, not saying always or never, but being quite specific rather than general. So the question for us is, how do we do that? And what can we do to actually change that self-talk? There are habits that we can do around triggers, and there are thoughts and self-talks we can do around how we respond. But the big challenge for us is there's lots of can'ts at the moment. Lots can't do this, can't do that. Less so cans. And I think we need, as I said earlier, to reframe ourselves as cans in what we can do. And in pulling this workshop together a couple of weeks ago, originally for Entity, I came across, or I remembered, an ad campaign from Commonwealth Bank around can versus can't. And there's a very nice ode by an actress who we all know from Muriel's Wedding. And I'm going to play that now because I think it's a really nice piece.
There's a four-letter word as offensive as any. It holds back the few, puts a stop to the many. You can't climb that mountain, you can't cross the sea, you can't become anything you want to be. You can't hit a century, they can't find a cure. You can't think about leaving or searching for more. Because can't is a word with the habit of stopping the ebb and flow of ideas. It keeps dropping itself when we know in our hearts it's not needed, and saying don't go when we could have succeeded. But those four little letters that end with a T, they can change in an instant when shortened to 3. We can take off the T, we can do it today. We can move forward, not back. We can find our own way. We can build, we can run, we can follow the sun, we can push, we can pull. We can say, I'm someone who refuses to believe that life can't be better with the removal of one insignificant letter.
Nice piece, I think, and 5 years old, but just as relevant today. So it's more for us around what we can focus on, more can and less can't. And I completely and fully appreciate and understand that is difficult, especially for people that are locked down for 6 weeks, don't need to tell me. But if we focus on all the can'ts and not on the cans, then our negative self-talk and how we respond to trigger events will actually just explode even further. So the challenge for us all is more can and less can't. And I think there's two things we can do in particular. And the first is back to that self-talk. What do we say to ourselves? How can we fill our mind, as this graphic shows, with positive thoughts? How can we start to actually change the mindset? And the second is, it's all very well to say it, how can we actually embed it into habits? What can we do for us? So as I said before, for me, the habit was stop watching the news all day and do it at the beginning and the middle of the day, beginning and the end of the day, unless there was something I specifically needed from one of the organisations I was involved with. Similarly, I like going to the gym. I can't do that now. So I've now got a routine of being up at 7 every morning and walking the streets of where I live. I find that a new habit that I'm enjoying and I get the most of. I'm lucky enough to be able to have a self-contained office. Others aren't. I know some of my clients are in working out of their laundry, for instance. So that's a challenge. But I decided to get some plants to brighten it up and make it hopefully a little bit healthier. And I'm also very conscious now, much more conscious than I've ever been, of having a beginning, a middle and an end of the day and creating some outcomes around that. I was talking to a client the other day whose desk is right outside their bedroom, sharing it with her partner. And so the suggestion was, why don't you put a sheet over the computer and your desk at the end of the day to mark the end, so it's not in your face all the time. So we can do little habits to create different dynamics for us. Similarly, talking to some clients around customers, they're very much a face-to-face customer visit organisation, and we've talked about, well, maybe with people working from home, they'll be open to 15-minute calls. You'll actually be able to get more calls. And what I've found with a number of clients, they've actually been able to engage with clients more rather than less, even though there's not face-to-face. So that's, for us, for me, the say and the do. So the question is for us, how do we create change? And what I'd like us to do is focus more on what we can than what we can't, and actually think about what are the mindset changes that we could do to ourselves, and also especially as leaders, to others, and also what habits can we do to embed change. So I'm going to unshare this and then going to invite everyone to, whoever wants to share what they've done or ideas they've got, because as you know, in these sessions that I run, it's really great to be able to get everyone to share. So I'm just going to do that. Hold on, participants. It's not letting me do it. So the second area I'd like to focus on relates to your role as a leader, because many of you, or most of you on this call, are leaders in your organisations. And I think we've seen this over the last 6 months as we've gone through this, and I think it's just as critical now to reflect on what your role as a leader, what's the shadow you portray as a leader. And I think the first thing is about the communications, and I think it's okay, it's good to be communicating during Zoom calls, but I think it's really important to communicate a way forward, both the next steps, even if they're unsure, but importantly, a light on the hill. What is it we will get through this? And I noticed the poor, under besieged Dr. Fauci doing that yesterday himself, talking about, I believe, we've got things we need to do now, next steps, but I believe we will get there. I believe we actually are going to be able to handle this by virtue of a mix of different things, such as vaccines and behaviour changes. So I think it's important to continually, especially when there are new triggers or challenges, to communicate that way forward. What are the next steps? But also, what is the light on the hill? And continue to build trust through vulnerability. Many of us have talked about Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of the team, that talks about trust being key for high-functioning teams, high-performing teams. But to do that, you need to be vulnerable at the right degree, and you need to make it safe for people to talk and to share. If you want to see this in par excellence, I encourage you to look on this YouTube video at the back is listed at the bottom, about Arne Sorensen, the CEO and president of Marriott, when this all started to occur back in March, April. And this was his presentation, his delivery to his team. And he was very vulnerable to start with. He was bald because he'd just gone through cancer treatment, and he spoke about that as part of his presentation. But because he knew people knew about it and he wanted to clear where he was at with that. He was direct, though. He didn't sugarcoat the issues and the vast amount of people that needed to be stood down across Marriott worldwide. He was clear on the things they're going to do. He didn't shirk away from that. And he also, stood up and said that he would be taking no salary for the rest of the year and his executives would be taking 50% cut. So he shared the pain, so to speak. But he ended with optimism, but optimism in quite an emotional way. So to me, this was a real way of communicating a way forward, what's going to happen now, but there is a light on the hill. We will come back by doing these things. He built trust by being personal, but also showing that there was a certain amount of uncertainty, and that's okay to feel that, making it safe for others. So this to me has been the par excellence in terms of CEO communication. And whilst we all don't have to deal with something as dire as what Arne did, it certainly has some great lessons. I encourage you to watch it. And when you send the pack out, you'll see that YouTube link. And the third thing is really about being accessible and checking in. Are you okay? Everyone's very busy, but I think accessibility, people, if you work together in an office, people can't drop by your office. You won't see them in the tea room. So, checking in, being accessible, but also checking in when people aren't coming to you, I think is really key. And the second area I want to talk about then and share and encourage you to reflect on is in the drivers of motivation. And there's been some research done on this quite a lot over the years. And the original research back some time ago when Dan Pink wrote Drive, and it's been validated. And when he talked about reward and recognition versus what were actually the true drivers of motivation. And there were three of them: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And I think if you've got people in your team that aren't motivated and are finding it difficult, even with the sort of things you're doing to try and create the right habits, mindsets, and focus on can't, I think it's worth thinking through, how could I motivate them based on what is going to motivate them around autonomy, mastery, or purpose. And autonomy obviously is the need to be able to direct your own life and your own work, and to feel control, motivation through a certain degree of control. And autonomy, according to Pink, motivates us to think more creatively because it's less constrained, I suppose. And those people that are less constrained by all the workplace rules over time. So rethinking traditional ideas of control. Well, that's sort of happened in a certain extent. For many, don't have regular office hours, and those are working at home, and they've got other things that are occurring. Dress codes have changed. Whilst I don't encourage people to wear pajamas, I think things are more relaxed in that sense. Numerical targets and forecasts for some businesses have gone out the door because it's too uncertain. So I think the opportunity to create more autonomy for people to determine how they start at the start, the middle, and the end of the day, how they set up their work routines, and give them that control is fun. So the when and the how, how do they set boundaries? And if they're not doing that, help them to do that. Help them to create autonomy. Help them to focus on what they can do in terms of control. And I think this is even more critical when there's certain personal circumstances such as homeschooling and no childcare for those in Melbourne. Those sorts of things create that need to give them more autonomy and control over their work life. The second one obviously is around masteries, being able to create better skills, that desire to improve. And this motivates some people. Not all these things motivate everyone, and some will motivate different people, the same person at different times. So if you're motivated by mastery, you'll see yourself as unlimited potential, very much an internal locus of control, and you'll always be looking to improve and learn more. And I think really helping people think about, is there something in terms of skill development they could do at the moment? Is there something around learning and projects you could have as a group within the organisation? Which brings me to the third one, which is around purpose, creating meaning and contribution over time. And they may feel, disengaged and demotivating because they haven't got that work framework. So I think it's important about, possibly the longer horizon isn't as clear. So it's around creating purpose in the short term. And interestingly, I saw some people during the initial phases, at least, actually finding purpose in the crisis. They felt engaged, they felt empowered, they got into it in a good way. They wanted to actually make a difference to their staff, to their customers, to their clients. So they got purpose out of it. As it drags on, that becomes more challenging. So thinking about what purpose is in the short, medium and long term for people where they're feeling that disengaged from what they do. So I think it can help by setting certain goals, so it's smaller goals. If people are finding these goals too much, halve it and then halve it again. Try and make it attainable so that people generate success over time. Create senses of accomplishment. I think, Vivian, you talked about it in terms of, when you get X, have some sort of personal reward. Carve out time to work on creative projects. If there is time because your workload is reduced, create some creative projects. And one of the boards I'm on, the organisation, they're not operating, so they've created Skunkworks, and they're doing small mini by Zoom Skunkwork campaign activities around particular projects and initiatives. The other one, I think, is actually to facilitate conversations around the customer. Actually start to think about what are they experiencing? How can we help them? To what Colin, you talked about that earlier. How can we help them? What can we do for our customers' customers? And actually create purpose through the line, not directly around what is happening in the longer term. So I think there's an issue of horizons there. And there's been some debate since Pink launched this model some years ago around also connection as a driver of motivation. And I think that's what we've just been talking about before this, ensuring that there's connection. Now that could be partly around purpose, but I think in this instance, it's around personal connection, not just connection or purpose, not just purpose of the organisation, but connection with people, and being able to actually engage with people and give people a quick call. You may not have talked to them for a year or so. I spoke to someone that I hadn't talked to for well over a year yesterday. I'd sent them a text and he rang me and we had a chat. And it was just are you okay? Time to have a chat. And that was nice. I hadn't spoken to that person for a while, but he came into my mind because I think I saw something on LinkedIn or something. So autonomy, mastery, purpose, connection. Think about how you could use those drivers for teams and individually over time. So that's where we've got to for today. I've got some resources to share here because I think, you could obviously run this session or some of the exercises from this session. You'll get a copy of the slides that you could use a recording, or if you want to do a tailored process for in-house, give me a call about that. I've also got access to an online course, self-paced online course on personal resilience, which really covers some of the issues I've talked about today, but talks about barriers and beliefs and managing stress. It wasn't specifically developed for coronavirus, but it is extremely relevant and enables people to work it through, especially if you've got someone that's really battling. I think many organisations have employee assistance programs if things are getting more serious. Contact me if you'd like to know about a few that I know of in organisations I'm involved with. I think having that in the background as a fallback for people to call and contact can be of real value. And especially if people are getting into more mental health issues. And if they are, and you're seeing that more mental health issues, there's specific resources on both Lifeline and Beyond Blue around COVID and techniques, as well as, of course, their chat lines and their helplines if people are in serious mental distress because of what's occurring. So, I've really talked at the one end, or what we can do individually and as leaders. There are things we may need to do for individuals in our organisation, and I really encourage you to keep alert to that as you go through. Finally, in wrap up, I think we all need a buddy. So who's your buddy at the moment? It can be someone in your workplace, it can be an advisor you have, it can be a friend. But I think we all need a buddy to sometimes to ride out this CoronaCoaster, and to vent when we need to. That's all right, when we're having a not so good day, but also to celebrate those achievements as we get through it. So really encourage you to think about who your buddy is, to keep you accountable, but also to challenge. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for being part of this. Also, thank you to Energy Solutions that energised me and motivated me to do this for their clients. And look, I wish you all the best. Thanks very much.